a lot of people say when they're talking about learning a new language that you have to think in the language to be able to really learn it well. Okay, but at the beginning, before you've started learning, I don't really think this is that helpful. The thing is, you need to acquire vocabulary and you need to understand how the grammar works before you can speak a language effectively. And to be honest, without irritating everyone who you're going to speak to. So people say, for example, okay, you can learn the names of objects, for example, by pointing at them. So let's take this glass. Okay, so I can do that, and I can learn names of objects by someone pointing it out to me. And then when you're with other natives of that language, you can try and find ways of asking about things. So you can say, "What's the thing you put water in?" Well, and then the person will say, "Oh, it's a glass or it's a cup." So that can be effective. But if you don't have the words to start asking about things, then you're not going to be able to ask. So really, you need to have a basic vocabulary in order to start sort of interacting with other people. And where are you going to get that vocabulary from? Well, you have to look it up. You have to, and essentially, you have to translate. The translation is not some evil thing. In fact, translation is incredibly useful. The thing is, you have to kind of translate with discretion. Now, the other thing people say is that you have to speak with other people who speak the language, and this is completely true. And to be honest, this is the most useful thing you can do to speak. But also, you need to listen a lot, because when you're listening to other people speak the language, that's when you really start learning how the language works. If you have to do some work with grammar yourself. Grammar is a good thing. Anyone who says it's not really just needs to fuck off. So look up the grammar, see how it works, and then listen to people speaking, and then you'll start to piece together how the language is formed. Look up words in dictionary, and then you'll hear them being spoken, and then you'll remember them better. So it's not just one thing. You can't just expect to learn a language by just throwing yourself into it without any kind of system, or without any without a well thought out approach. You need to look at the grammar. You need to look up words. You need to write them down, and you need to listen a lot. You need to expose yourself to the language as much as possible. Then, once you get to a certain level, you can start thinking in the language. Once you have a certain level of words, you can start asking about how to say different things, because you can describe the thing that you want to know the name of. For example, come si dice la cosa con cui tu fai la linea? Con la penna. Ah, si dice regola. It's a ruler. But if I didn't know how to say, how do you call the thing which you draw the line with, then it's useless to say think in English, right? Doesn't make any sense. To be honest, when I'm speaking Italian and when I'm speaking Spanish, when I attempt to speak French, I don't particularly consider that I'm thinking in the language, but I'm not thinking in English either. I'm just using the words I know and I'm familiar with. I think your brain learns actively and passively, but at the beginning, when you start learning a language, there's a lot of active learning, which gradually you start learning more passively, but first you need to be kind of engaged with the language, and the only way to really engage with the language from the start is to look things up, is to do your homework, is to find out about the grammar, etc. Learning a language is a complicated process, and it's never going to be an easy thing, but it's incredibly rewarding, and I think it does get easier. The beginning is difficult, and it gets easier. But once you've learned one language, you start learning another one, then you find that it gets easier, because the second language is easier than learning the first, because you know kind of what you have to do in order to learn the language. So basically, the more languages you learn, the easier it's going to be. But yeah, it's always a mixture of things, and it's never just one approach. personally for me, the just complete mindless immersion is not the best way forward. That's my opinion. Ciao.